The biggest cinematic event of the year has arrived. After numerous delays and drama surrounding everything about it, we've made it. Through so many critical and box office flops over the summer season, 2 massive movies by 2 critically acclaimed filmmakers coming out the same day is here to save us from the slump in the cinema. But how did we get here? Well, it all started in 2020. COVID-19 has struck everyone in every industry, essentially putting the world on hold in all aspects of life. No one could go anywhere, do anything, much less see anything. So of course, all sorts of entertainment either had to outright stop or be shown through streaming services. And that's what companies, studios, and Warner Media did. They announced that 17 of their upcoming 2021 films will be made available on HBO Max, day and date with their theatrical release dates. Of course, this came with a lot of backlash from those in the industry, with this gigantic push of the rise of streaming services. One of the biggest names who disagreed with it was none other than Christopher Nolan, a powerhouse auteur and a champion for the theatrical experience, and a person who obviously disagrees with the change. At the time, this was a massive deal. Warner Brothers and Nolan had been in a strong partnership, nearing 2 decades worth of films, including Dunkirk, Inception, and the Dark Knight trilogy. And in a statement released by The Hollywood Reporter in December of 2020, Nolan had this to say: "Some of our industry's biggest filmmakers and most important movie stars went to bed the other night thinking they were working for the greatest movie studio, and woke up to find out they were working for the worst streaming service." Safe to say he was less than keen on it. And coming off numerous headaches with the release of Tenet, a $205 million film that garnered $365 million in the box office, while good for the circumstances of the time, today is considered a bomb. So with all this in mind, Nolan, for the first time, split from Warner Brothers to find a new home. And of course, there were tons of suitors, and for good reason. Christopher Nolan is one of the very few directors today who could sell their movie on their name alone. So seeing companies like Sony and Apple handing him a blank check was no surprise. Even Netflix dipped their toes in, offering a theatrical release for his next film, an insane rarity in that industry. Finally, in September of 2021, he would find his home in Universal Pictures, landing a biopic about the father of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer, with an initial tentative release date of late 2023 to early 2024. This would eventually be set in stone in the following month for a release date of July 21, 2023, with an estimated budget of $100 million and Cillian Murphy as the star of the film. And of course, it was on his terms. 100-day theater exclusivity, no day-and-date release, and those sweet IMAX screens for 3 weeks, all for himself. The film would later be titled Oppenheimer. And Nolan is obviously incredibly pleased with the deal, but his ex-studio is also understandably infuriated. In April 2022, it was announced that a Barbie movie would be released on July 21st of the following year. Now, a Barbie project had been in the works for over a decade beforehand, way back in 2009 with, funny enough, Universal Pictures, but early development only began in 2014 with Sony Pictures having the rights to the property, eventually staying in development hell from then on out, through multiple writers, directors, and casting changes with both Amy Schumer and Anne Hathaway set to star in the role. And yet again, Sony eventually lost those rights to Warner Brothers in 2018, which finally let the project out of development hell. Well, in small doses at least. In 2019, Warner would find their Barbie in Oscar-nominated actress Margot Robbie, who would also end up producing the film as well. In 2021, Greta Gerwig was set to helm the director's chair coming off her Oscar-nominated film Little Women. The screenwriters would include both her and her husband, Noah Baumbach, who was also coming off the success of his Oscar-nominated film Marriage Story. And between late 2021 and early 2022, casting would slowly release for both films, and they were both stacked. Barbie would have a supporting cast of Ryan Gosling, Emma Mackey, Dua Lipa, Will Ferrell, Issa Rae, Simu Liu, and Michael Cera. Oppenheimer would have a supporting cast of Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Florence Pugh, Rami Malek, Casey Affleck, Josh Hartnett, and Robert Downey Jr. 2 strong casts consisting of some of Hollywood's best and iconic performers. And while the hype was slowly building with these bumps in casting news, things didn't start to get rolling until the first teasers released. Barbie released theirs on December 16, 2022, still holding the July 21st release date for the next year. And Oppenheimer released theirs on December 18, 2022, also still holding the July 21st release date for the next year. This created a bit of a rift, seeing who of Nolan or Warner Brothers would blink first to move their dates. Except they didn't, both being incredibly defiant on how their relationship ended, standing their ground in this cinematic pettiness, releasing trailer after trailer still holding the same release date. And with each trailer released, people started to take note that both these films, who have critically acclaimed filmmakers behind the camera, with two very different target audiences, would be releasing the same day. So of course, the internet took it by storm. The talk around the two movies was fairly strong early in the new year, but by the end of May 2023, both films would release their main trailers, gearing up for the marketing, and interest skyrocketed. All talk was about how these two incredibly different films would be releasing the same day, eventually leading to the hype on a potential double feature, and everybody just ran with it. If you had interest in anything cinema and movies, you couldn't help but engage with the discourse around it. The ridiculousness and audacity of pulling something off is a massive commitment for anybody really, but it was a commitment that people were willing to take, because everyone could see it, that these aren't just two films. This was an event, a cinematic event, one that you'd think an advocate for the cinematic experience would be happy with, unless you're the director of the opposing film with a 3-hour runtime that's also rated R. With Barbie taking away some of Oppenheimer's screens on the same day, it was annoying for someone like Nolan to finally return to the cinema after years, but he's facing the biggest IP of the last 60 years. But I honestly don't think he can be too mad, since the discourse around both movies have led to increased revenue for both their domestic opening weekends, where both films are actually currently poised to make double their initial targets. Happy days then, right? Well, there's actually another guy that had a problem with this, one who was called the savior of cinema back in 2022, and that's Tom Cruise. Coming off his massive success with Top Gun, he was looking for another home run in the summer box office with Mission Impossible 7. And of course, Barbenheimer created a bit of a predicament for Cruise and crew. The trades initially reported that Tom Cruise was furious that both Barbie and Oppenheimer would be taking screens a week after the release of Mission Impossible. Mainly Oppenheimer though, as it would take away IMAX screens from it, one of the biggest selling points for the film. Both films actually. And with a budget of almost $300 million, Cruise was not a happy camper. But cooler heads prevail. Both Tom Cruise and director Christopher McQuarrie would post photos on social media urging people to see Barbie, Oppenheimer, and hell, Indiana Jones 5. And in response, both Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie would post similar photos urging people to see Oppenheimer, Indy, and Mission Impossible. This really only multiplied the hype. Through the weeks, countless posts, t-shirts, and trailers from both films will continue to push the hype higher and higher, only pushing their box office performances higher and higher as well. Even through the writers and actors strike, which the studios should obviously pay and support their workers fairly in the current year, it's a total no-brainer, has only been getting stronger and stronger. And that leads us to today, opening weekend. An eventful one, and one that's probably going to be the last true big cinematic event in a while. Anyways, get out of here. You've heard the story, now it's time to experience it.
And happy holidays! We'll see you at the movies!